Reading education is the process by which individuals are taught to derive meaning from text. Government-funded scientific research on reading and reading instruction in the U.S. began in the 1960s. In the 1970s and 1980s, researchers began publishing findings based on converging evidence from multiple studies. However, these findings have been slow to move into typical classroom practice. Competencies for proficient reading. Proficient reading is equally dependent on two critical skills: the ability to understand the language in which the text is written, and the ability to recognize and process printed text. Each of these competencies is likewise dependent on lower-level skills and cognitive abilities. Children who readily understand spoken language and who are able to fluently and easily recognize printed words do not usually have difficulty with reading comprehension. However, students must be proficient in both competencies to read well. Difficulty in either domain undermines the overall reading process. At the conclusion of reading, children should be able to retell the story in their own words, including characters, setting, and the events of the story. Reading researchers define a skilled reader as one who can understand written text as well as they can understand the same passage if spoken. There is some debate as to whether print recognition requires the ability to perceive printed text and translate it into spoken language, or rather to translate printed text directly into meaningful symbolic models and relationships. The existence of speed reading, and its typically high comprehension rate, would suggest that the translation into verbal form as an intermediate to understanding is not a prerequisite for effective reading comprehension. This aspect of reading is the crux of much of the reading debate. The purpose of reading is to have access to the literature of a specific language. Reading materials have traditionally been chosen from literary texts that represent higher forms of culture. According to many traditional approaches, the learner's aim is to study vocabulary items, grammar and sentence structures, with a concern for learning the syntax of these higher cultures. These approaches assume that authentic reading material is limited to the work or experience of great authors. Instructional methods. A variety of different methods of teaching reading have been advocated in English-speaking countries. In the United States, the debate is often more political than objective. Parties often divide into two camps which refuse to accept each other's terminology or frame of reference. Despite this, both camps often incorporate aspects of the other's methods. Both camps accuse the other of causing failure to learn to read and write. Phonics advocates assert that to read a large vocabulary of words correctly and fluently requires detailed knowledge of the structure of the English language, particularly spelling, speech patterns. Whole language advocates assert that students do not need to be able to sound out words, but should look at unknown words and figure them out using context. Research. In 2000, the National Reading Panel issued a report based on a meta-analysis of published research on effective reading instruction. The report found varying evidence-based support for some common approaches to teaching reading. Phonemic awareness. The NRP called phonemic awareness instruction impressive. Overall, the findings showed that teaching children to manipulate phonemes in words was highly effective under a variety of teaching conditions with a variety of learners across a range of grade and age levels, and that teaching phonemic awareness to children significantly improves their reading more than instruction that lacks any attention to PAR. The report singles out PAR instruction based on teaching children to manipulate phonemes with letters as highly effective. Phonemic awareness instruction also improved spelling in grade-level students, although it did not improve spelling in disabled readers. Lexical reading. Lexical reading involved acquiring words or phrases without attention to the characters or groups of characters that compose them, or by using whole language learning and teaching methodology, sometimes argued to be in competition with phonics methods, and that the whole language approach tends to impair learning how to spell. Historically, the two camps have been called whole language and phonics. Although the whole language instructional method has also been referred to as literature-based reading program and integrated language arts curriculum. Whole word, also known as sight word and look and say, teaches reading skills and strategies in the context of authentic literature. Word recognition accuracy is considered less important than meaning accuracy, therefore, there is an emphasis on comprehension as the ultimate goal. Students in this method memorize the appearance of words, or learn to recognize words by looking at the first and last letter from rigidly selected vocabularies in progressive texts. Often preliminary results show children taught with this method have higher reading levels than children learning phonics, because they learn to automatically recognize a small selection of words. However, later tests demonstrate that literacy development becomes stunted when hit with longer and more complex words later. Sublexical reading involves teaching reading by associating characters or groups of characters with sounds or by using phonics learning and teaching methodology, sometimes argued to be in competition with whole language methods. Phonics refers to an instructional method for teaching children to read. The method teaches sounds to be associated with letters and combinations of letters. Phonics is distinct from the linguistics terms phoneme and phonetics, which refer to sounds and the study of sounds respectively. Varieties of phonics include embedded phonics is an instructional approach where letter sounds are taught opportunistically, as the need arises and in meaningful contexts, such as the reading of a storybook. Embedded phonics is often associated with a whole language approach to teaching reading. Synthetic phonics and analytic phonics are different but popular methods of teaching phonics. Synthetic and analytic phonics approaches both generally involve explicit, carefully sequenced instruction that teach a large body of phonics patterns. Synthetic phonics emphasizes the one-to-one correspondences between phonemes and graphemes. In synthetic phonics programs, students say the sounds for the graphemes they see and orally blend them together to produce a spoken word. In the context of phonics, the word blend takes on a different meaning from its use in linguistics. In analytic phonics, students often learn phonograms, the rhyme parts of words including the vowel and what follows it. Students are taught to generalize the phonogram to multiple words. The phonogram ale can be used to read fail, trail, mail, whale, sail, and other words. The Ortine phonography, originally developed to teach brain-damaged adults to read, is a form of phonics instruction that blends synthetic and analytic components. Orton described 73 phonograms, or letter combinations, and 23 rules for spelling and pronunciation which Orton claimed would allow the reader to correctly pronounce and spell all but 123 of the 13,000 most common English words. Pronunciation guides in contrast to phonics, which teaches the pronunciation rules of English. A new technology, phonetically intuitive English, directly shows English words' pronunciation by adding diacritical marks on them. This solves the problem that pronunciation rules can often be confusing. The pronunciation guide approach has been proven very successful in reading education for languages with very complex orthography such as Chinese. Pinyin is a system of phonetic transcription for Mandarin Chinese and is printed above Chinese characters in children's textbooks as a pronunciation guide, and has enabled China to achieve a high literacy rate for the most difficult language in the world. Other instructional methods: native reading. Some methods of mixed phonics and whole word. Native reading, for example, differs from both in that it emphasizes teaching reading beginning at a very early age, when the human brain is neurodevelopmentally most receptive to learning language. Native readers learn to read as toddlers, starting at the same time they learn to speak, or very soon thereafter. Reading workshop is based on the premise that readers need time to read and discuss their reading. Readers need access to a wide variety of reading materials of their choice. Classrooms must acquire a wide variety of reading materials to accommodate this need. Readers need to respond to the text and demonstrate quality literate behaviors. There is not a script to follow but a framework to guide instruction. Students are exposed to a variety of learning experiences. There is time for student collaboration and a time for engaged reading. During reading workshop, the teacher models a whole group strategy lesson and then gives students large blocks of time to read and to practice the strategy. This practice can occur independently, with partners, or in small groups with a book or text chosen by the student. The teacher moves around the room and confers with the students about their reading. The teacher can meet with small, flexible groups to provide additional needs-based instruction. At the end of the workshop, the whole groups comes together to share their learning. Examples of improving reading: an adult or peer reads with the student by modeling fluent reading and then asking the student to read the same passage aloud with encouragement and feedback by the adult or peer. A student listens to a tape of a fluent reader reading text at the student's independent level at a pace of about 80 to 100 words a minute. The student listens to the tape the first time and then practices reading along with the tape until the student is able to read fluently. The student reads with a peer partner. Each partner takes a turn reading to the other. A more fluent reader can be paired with a less fluent reader to model fluent reading. The more fluent reader can provide feedback and encouragement to the less fluent reader. Students of similar reading skills can also be paired, particularly if the teacher has modeled fluent reading and the partner reading involves practice. The following is a list of the 7 important strategies that all readers must be able to apply to text in order to read and understand content. The 7 strategies are: 1. Making connections. 2. Creating mental images. 3. Making inferences, drawing conclusions. 4. Asking questions. 5. Determining what is important. 6. Synthesizing. And 7. Monitoring comprehension and meaning. Reading comprehension. Reading comprehension involves the making sense of text. Done successfully, this allows the readers to gain knowledge, enjoy a story, and make connections with the larger world. Several skills support reading comprehension, including making predictions and inferences, monitoring understanding, using text structures, and utilizing prior knowledge. 2 of the most important aspects of successful comprehension are activating prior knowledge and metacognition, which are 2 of the principles of learning identified in the National Research Council's report. Many studies have identified the importance of prior knowledge in reading comprehension. Many researchers have shown that having some prior knowledge about the topic of a passage enables both greater comprehension of the text and better memory for it. If we have prior knowledge about a topic in a text, we construct meaning based on our experience, and we can adjust and change those plans as we go along. Some authors specify 2 types of prior knowledge necessary for successful comprehension. World knowledge aids in understanding fiction, and domain-specific knowledge facilitates comprehension of non-fiction. Students who lack this request background information, so as to make connections within the text. Another learning principle that greatly influences reading comprehension is the use of metacognition. The metacognitive approach to instruction can help students learn to take control of their own learning by defining learning goals and monitoring their progress in achieving them. A great deal of research indicates that accomplished readers monitor their comprehension as they read by engaging in strategic processing, such as rereading previous text. To resolve comprehension failure, students who are not able to track their own understanding gain neither information or enjoyment from reading, as they do not know how to obtain meaning from the text. Many strategies have been applied. Many studies point to the success of strategy instruction, particularly for students who are poor comprehenders. Some strategies that have been helpful are summarization, question generation, making predictions and inferences, image making, knowledge and use of text structure, rereading, self-regulation, activation of prior knowledge, questioning the author, and using graphic organizers. The variety of strategies allows the teacher to choose a strategy or strategies to suit the text and the needs of the student. For an example of a specific intervention incorporating 4 strategies for comprehension building, utilized reciprocal teaching to model summarizing, questioning, clarifying, and predicting. The authors indicate that they choose these skills due to their dual functions as comprehension fostering and comprehension monitoring activities. The reciprocal teaching method, which involves the teacher modeling the designated activities and gradually turning the procedure over to the students themselves, uses Vygotsky's idea of scaffolding. In this process, children first experience a particular set of cognitive activities in the presence of experts, and only gradually come to perform these functions by themselves. In this study, the students who participated in the reciprocal teaching intervention showed dramatic improvement in comprehension scores and maintained them for at least 8 weeks. Non-traditional approaches programs have been established to provide certified therapy animals, such as dogs, as non-judgmental listeners, to build motivation and help children build proficiency and gain confidence in their reading ability. Success rate of reading education in the U.S. National literacy rates range from about 10% to 99+%. Print exposure. Print exposure, the amount of time a child or person spends being visually aware of the written word, whether that be through newspapers, magazines, books, journals, scientific papers, or more. Research has shown that the amount of print material that a child accesses has deep cognitive consequences. In addition, the act of reading itself, for the most part irrespective of what is being read, increases the achievement difference among children. Children who are exposed to large amounts of print often have more success in reading and have a larger vocabulary to draw from than children who see less print. The average conversations among college graduates, spouses or adult friends contain less rare words than the average preschool reading book. Other print sources have increasingly higher amounts of rare words, from children's books, to adult books, to popular magazines, newspapers, and scientific articles. Television, even adult news shows, do not have the same level of rare words that children's books do. The issue is that oral language is very repetitive. To learn to read effectively, a child needs to have a large vocabulary. Without this, when the child does read, they stumble over words that they do not know, and have trouble following the idea of the sentence. This leads to frustration and a dislike of reading. When a child is faced with this difficulty, he or she is less likely to read, thus further inhibiting the growth of their vocabulary. Children who enjoy reading do it more frequently and improve their vocabulary. A study of out-of-school reading of 5th graders found that a student in the 50th percentile read books about 5 minutes a day, while a student in the 20th percentile read books for less than a minute a day. This same study found that the amount of time a child in the 10th percentile spent reading in 2 days was the amount of time a child in the 90th percentile spent reading all year. Print exposure can also be a big factor in learning English as a second language. Book flood experiments are an example of this. The Book Flood program brought books in English to the classroom. Through focusing their English language learning on reading books instead of endless worksheets, the teachers were able to improve the rate at which their students learned English.